Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Stepping Up by me, Kendar, the Tiger Waits, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. Today we are doing Chapter 87. A slash up, then across, and the gnoll fell. Arm up, his shield took the overhead blow. A turn, a slash, another creature fell. Tibs carefully pivoted, his shield and jacket sword at the ready. Only rubble remained. His friends only had minor injuries. They had raised their guards the moment the hall had widened to give them maneuvering space. Even Stowe's surprised declaration as to the distribution of the reward hadn't caused them to allow Ganny to get the literal drop on them again. That's going to be it. I know you hate this pro writing aid, but yeah. Anything drop? Jackal shifted the rumbles with his foot. Silver, Mez replied. The fighter cursed. You're still getting greedy? That's your job, Kirina said. There is something here. Kamdar's eyes were closed as he turned into place slowly. A secret. But one we are meant to discover. This, he sighed. I have never felt such a secret before. Secrets are usually not intended to be found out. So, a cache. Jekyll rubbed his hand eagerly. Tibs, looking. I would have felt the ones in the trap rooms or the pool. The one holding the key in the boulder room is also one I have not sensed. They're getting stronger, Kina said. Like the rest of us. Maybe that means you can discern subtle details like intent. Subtle detail. There's going to be something with essence again, Tib said, touching the wall before him. A puzzle? Liz asked. He shrugged. There was mostly stone and corruption making up the walls. Unlike the doorway, Stowe had... Unlike the doorway Stowe had in place for them to bypass the floor, the ones Ganny used to drop the gnoll on them vanished once they were used. Tibs, Jekyll called. There's something here. Jekyll was on the other side, looking at the wall. Tibs sensed what had caught his attention as soon as he focused on it. The same essence was there, but their structure was different. Something in it led Tibs to think they were meant to interact with it. As he stepped next to the fighter, he was already shifting the Aerith essence around so they would divide and stop. Hey, Kamdar, Jekyll called. Is this what you felt? Tibs knew how to do this. I do not know, the cleric replied as Tibs studied what he sensed. There is no direction in what I am sensing, other than one of it being here. The way it worked did require someone to sense the corruption to undo the lock. Tibs? Jekyll asked. You can open it. It was time to have someone else learn something. I'm not a rogue. This doesn't need a rogue, just someone with earth as their element. The wall is 3 paces thick, Rena said, then added as Tibs raised an eyebrow. I can sense the air beyond it. It's a room, but I can't make out any details in it. So you can open this, Jekyll asked. It's yours, Tibs said before Kirina replied. I'm the team's dumb fighter, Tibs. If it can't be done by hitting, it's not for me. So try that. With a roll of the eyes, Jekyll tapped the stone, then punched it lightly and harder. He made his arm stone and stuck it hard enough the impact sounded like it should have cracked the wall, but left no mark. Put the knuckle wrap on and hit it again, to the same lack of result. Not for me, Jekyll said. This motioned the fighter to lean in, and Tibs. I can probably do this. He motioned for the fighter to lean in, and Tibs lowered his voice. You don't always have to be the dumb one on the team. Jekyll looked offended and waited for Kirina, who chuckled. He let out a resigned sigh. I hate the two of you sometimes. He placed a hand on the wall. You do realize that anyone who knows you has realized that dumb fighter is an act, right? She said. Jekyll snorted. Not next to you, to the two of you. Now be quiet. You're forcing me to focus, and that's hard. Tibs sensed Jekyll's work, the way his essence radiated into the wall where his hand touched it, how it moved and tightened to push and pull at the essence there. It was direct and clumsy. And Tibbs wasn't sure if it was because Jackal wasn't experienced, a reflection of how he thought. It wasn't how Tibbs would have done it, but that was the point of the exercise. Jackal needed to learn to do something like this, the way Jackal would do it. When the fighter pulled his hand from the wall, it looked identical as before he touched it. Jackal turned his arm to stone and punched it hard. Where it had no effect before, the impact left a crack. With a grin, Jackal hit it again. With a third punch, chunks fell off. Not feeling any fire, Tibbs said, watching Jackal work. Does it mean only someone with earth can open it? And corruption, Tibbs replied. After Bardick's attack, Stowe put corruption in the walls, along with whatever other element makes them. It's to keep someone else from using it against him. Does making something some teams might not be able to find... Okay. Does making something some teams might not be able to find... Break the rules of other... Okay. Doesn't making something some teams might not be able to find break the rules of how a dungeon works? The archer asked. Still chuckled, made Tibbs consider who had told him that. My teacher is who told me that. He believes it, but he also thinks Stowe is a mindless creature. Which I'm not, the dungeon replied smugly. But, Tibbs continued, also think about, yeah, this doesn't sound like this. But you also have to think about what we've learned. But, Tibbs continued, you also have to think about what we've learned of how the rules work. They aren't what we thought they are. And I think that if there are rules, they apply to what we have to do to survive. This feels more like gaining an extra reward. Maybe different cache on this floor will need different element to open them. We need to remember that Gani designed this floor. She isn't as straightforward as Stowe is. Got that right, she said. Why do I feel that's a dig about how I designed the first 2 floors? It's not, she said. You have your set of strengths, I have mine. That's why we're supposed to work together. Okay, that's a dig, Stowe replied, and Tibbs smiled. Are they talking about you? Miz asked. Yeah. Oh, wait, no. Are they talking to you? This is each other. Each other, just frowned. How did you know? Well, what you told us isn't worthy of a smile, and you got distracted. Jackal had stopped pounding the wall and looked at Tibbs. You realize that if you're right, you're the only one who can open all the caches on this floor. He grinned. We're going to get so much loot. I don't have all the elements, and Don can open them too, since they all have corruption mixed in. Oh, Stowe said, and Tibbs could hear the grin. Did you just miss something? Yeah, I did, and he replied. Not that it's a problem, unless you want Tibbs to be the only one who has an unfair advantage. I never said he should. Hey, you made this floor. Hey, don't you float away from... Okay, let me do this again. I never said he should. Hey, you made this floor. Hey, don't you float away with that smirk on your face, Gani. You're the one who... Still's voice cut off as if a door closed on it. Tibbs' chuckle died as the implication of what had happened sunk in. He'd always assumed that when Still talked about being busy elsewhere, it meant his focus was on another part of the dungeon, since he was the dungeon. But this made it sound like he and Gani could move around. That the dungeon was more of a place they lived in rather than they were. Were there corridors beyond the walls, somehow hidden from incenses? Had there been more to Bardick flinging corruption about than just looking to melt the dungeon? He realized his friends were looking at him with quizzical expression. Later, are you getting the loot, or do we have enough we can move on? With an affronted huff, Jekyll went back to punching his way to the cache. So, have any of you come up with something to ask the dungeon? Miz asked. I am certain I should I am uncertain I should take the dungeon up on the offer, Rondar said. The staff is already more than I could ask for, and while I understand it was a random item, I am also not one of those who made a suggestion to a dungeon. Uh, I am also not one of those who made a suggestion the dungeon is rewarding. I'm not either, Mess said, but for one. I'm not either, Mess said, for once. But Tibs said we all get to pick one item, and so long as the dungeon can make it, we can have it. Instead of revealing which idea Sto had picked, he had offered to reward the entire team. One item for each of them, locked to them the way Tibbs's bracers were locked to him. Sto had been surprised when silence was the reply to his offer. Jekyll was who put into words how Tibbs felt, and by the others nodding along, they too. That's too much for me to just blurt something out. I have to think about it. Figure out something that's going to be useful to me. Tibbs agreed with Comdar. He had his bracers. On top of that, Sto had helped him have his audience with fire, and had tried to help him with the one for light. Asking for more felt like taking advantage of his friend. Yes! Jekyll yelled. He pushed Broken Stone out of the way and disappeared into the dark room he'd opened. The short passage was narrow, barely wide enough for the fighter, but the room that was becoming illuminated as Tibs stepped in after his friend was large enough they could all fit. Okay, Gunnar said, looking at the 5 pedestal on the other end of the room. Maybe this is worth locking behind a specific element. Each pedestal had an item on it. One on the left had a quiver. Next to it was a book, then another roll, a shield, and the last an amulet. The last one, an amulet. Don't touch it, Erno ordered the archer as Viz reached for the quiver. That's clearly for an archer. The little roll has lockpicks, Tibs said. The shield is for a fighter, she added. And the book for a sorcerer, and that leaves the amulet for the cleric. We don't need to fight over who gets what, Jekyll exclaimed. Don't touch it, she ordered him. Why would I touch a shield? Don't you think 5 items a little excessive? She asked, considering the fight wasn't that hard. No, Jekyll replied flatly. And I was right, Tibbs realized. Each item had some essence in them and looked to be of good quality. It was a lot for one fight. Comdar, she said, not taking her eyes off the fighter, tell me there isn't a secret to this room. The cleric opened his mouth, then closed it, surprised. You are correct. There is something hidden. He frowned, closed his eyes, and looked thoughtful. No, not a thing. This is more of a thought, an idea. He shook his head. Has gaining strength in your element confused you as much as this does me? Nope, Jekyll said. Not really. Mez had it. You have no idea, Tibbs said, rolling his eyes. They're not chuckled. You and Tibbs are the only ones without pre-existing system governing how they learn. We're just doing what we're told when we're told. As we grow, we're just doing what we're told when we're told as we grow stronger, with an exception here and there, she added, smiling. Why is there a trap in here? Jekyll whined. It's a cache. We're supposed to be getting... It's a cache. They're supposed to be about getting rewards. Tibbs decided not to mention some cache could come with traps or creatures protecting them. How did you know? Mez asked. Something Tibbs said in combination with this being too many items, she replied. Genny isn't straightforward, and she's who designed this floor. She's taken what we expect and used it to trick us. We expect that we know what a cache means, so she added something to it. Tibbs, what can you sense? Essences, he applied immediately, then focused on gaining more information. I think they're all there, at least my 8 are. I don't know enough about weaving to tell what they do. So this might be a death trap, Miss said, annoyed. Great. Let's just slave then. It's not worth risking it since we don't get to keep it anyway. Not that I have a use for a quiver. Tibbs doesn't need Tibbs doesn't need picks, like he said. Jekyll doesn't use shield. What do you think the book's about? The amulet. The amulets are reserved. The book will be about learning something. He said that's what books are for. Amulets have only been reserved to date, but is that all they can be? So we're all agreeing we're not taking anything, Jekyll asked. She nodded. Mez is right. And without knowing what this is about, we shouldn't risk it. Jekyll looked at Tibs, who shrugged, then at the clerk. Nothing on display matters to me. Good. The fighter turned, grabbed the shield off the pedestal before Karina could object. Jekyll! She yelled. Tibbs was distracted from the surge of anger by the shifting essence. The air around the four pedestals shimmered, and the items on them vanished. What kind of stupid move was that? Tibbs said I don't always have to be an idiot. And that's how you prove him wrong? The dungeon wasn't going to kill us, Jekyll said. This is a cache, not a death trap. You didn't want any, so I took mine, and now we know what happens. He motioned to the empty pedestal. That's a secret you said, Tibbs told the clerk. We only get one item, but we can pick which one. Unless we're fast enough to pull all of them off at the same time, Jekyll said, a gleam in his eyes. I am not attempting that. Not a death trap, Jekyll repeated with the certainty of the inexperienced. Having your hand disappear with the item isn't going to kill you, Mills replied, immediately. Enough! Karina snapped. All right, what you did wasn't entirely stupid, but pushing for more, that's being an idiot. Don't put your greed before our safety. Okay, I won't. Jekyll motioned to the exit. Let's move on to the next one, so Tibbs can find us another cache. He attached the shield to Comdar's pack. You are agreeing to this too easily, Karina stated. I know when I've lost a fight, Jekyll replied cheerily. No, Jekyll, you don't, Mez said. That's why you end up on the ground unconscious so often. Tibbs stared at the archer. He didn't know Mez went to watch the fighter's pit. Tibbs stared at the fighter. He didn't know Mez went to watch the fighters. Oh, I see what the problem is. The fighter's in the pit, too. You know what? He didn't know Mez went to watch the pit fights, too. Yeah, that sounds bad. Alrighty. And this concludes chapter 87. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to read more of the story, it is available on Royal Road for free. If you want to support me, which allows you to read about 3 or 4 chapters ahead, you can do that on Patreon. And if you want to listen to me do these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.